Chapter 8. St. Andrew's Plaza, Lower Manhattan. Ambler's eyes felt sandy, inflamed. His muscles ached. He was seated on a bench upon a large concrete platform between three looming federal buildings, each stone-faced and gray. As in much of Lower Manhattan, the giant structures were crowded together like trees in a dense forest competing for light and air. In most cities in the world, any one of the buildings would have been regarded as a grand edifice indeed. In Lower Manhattan, none left any individual impression at all. Ambler shifted again in his seat, not so much to get comfortable as to get less uncomfortable. The jackhammer of a Con Ed Street repair crew somewhere nearby was beginning to prompt a headache. He checked his watch. He had already read the New York Post from cover to cover. A vendor across the plaza was selling sugared nuts from his four-wheeled cart. Ambler was thinking about buying a bag simply to give himself something to do, when he noticed a middle-aged man in a Yankees jacket emerging from the back of a black town car. The mark had arrived. The man was paunchy and sweating despite the cold. He looked around agitatedly as, unaccompanied, he climbed the steps that led from the sidewalk to the plaza. This was someone who knew himself to be acutely vulnerable and was filled with a sense of foreboding. Ambler stood up slowly. Now what? He had figured that he would play out Arcady's scenario as long as he could, that something would come to him when it had to. It seemed entirely possible that the whole thing would prove a dry run. Walking toward Ambler rapidly was a woman in heels and a green vinyl raincoat. She had a full mane of tenderly blonde hair, full lips, gray-green eyes. The eyes put Ambler in mind of a cat, perhaps because, like a cat, she never seemed to blink. Incongruously, she was carrying a brown lunch sack. As she approached, her attention seemed distracted by the revolving door to the federal building on the north side of the plaza, and she stumbled into him. Cripes, I'm sorry," she murmured in a raspy voice. Ambler found that his hands were now clutching the paper sack, which his fingers quickly confirmed did not hold lunch. The man in the Yankees jacket had reached the plaza and was starting to walk toward the building. Perhaps 12 seconds remained. Ambler opened his tan raincoat. On every block of the city, one would see a dozen just like it, and pulled the weapon from the sack. It was a blued steel Ruger 44, a Red Hawk. More powerful than the job required and certainly too loud. He turned and saw that the blonde was seated at another bench near the building. She had given herself a ringside view. Now what? Ambler's heart was pounding. This was no dry run. This was madness. It was madness to have agreed to do this. It had been madness to have asked him in the first place. The mark stopped abruptly, looked around, and started to walk again. He was no more than 30 feet away from Ambler. An intuition glinted and then flared in Ambler's mind like the sun passing from under a cloud. Now he understood what he had previously only vaguely, subconsciously surmised. They never would have asked him. No doubt Arcady believed what he had been told, but sincerity was no guarantee of truth. In fact, the story made no sense. A risk-averse organization would never give someone of uncertain loyalties an assignment of this nature. He could have easily tipped off the authorities and ensured the mark's safety. Ergo, the whole arrangement was a test. Ergo, the gun was empty. The mark was 20 feet away, walking steadily to the building on the east side of the plaza. Now Ambler strode rapidly toward him, withdrew the Red Hawk from his coat, and aiming at the back of the man's baseball jacket, squeezed the trigger. There was the quiet, dry click of an empty gun, a sound largely swallowed by the traffic noises and the jackhammering of the Con Ed crew. Feigning dismay, he squeezed again and again until all 6 chambers had been hammered. He was sure that the blonde woman had seen the cylinder rotate, the firing pin twitch without effect. Detecting sudden movement in his peripheral vision, Ambler turned his head. A security guard across the plaza had seen him. The guard pulled out his own gun from his short navy coat and crouched in a two-handed firing position. The guard's gun, of course, was loaded. Ambler heard the hard popping of a .38 pistol and the higher-pitched twang as a bullet zinged by his ear. The guard was either lucky or skilled. Ambler could well be killed before he decided which. Even as Ambler started to run toward the stairway on the south side of the plaza, he noticed another sudden movement. The vendor, as if panicked, had pushed his wheeled cart into the ground, knocking him over. Ambler heard a pained grunt from the fallen guard and the metallic skittering of the pistol that had been knocked from his hand. Yet what had just happened made no sense. No mere bystander would ever move toward gunfire. The man posing as the vendor was surely part of a team. Ambler heard the roar of the motorcycle before he saw it. Seconds later, a powerful black Ducati monster, seemingly emerging from nowhere, the face of its driver hidden behind his helmet's visor. Friend or foe? "Jump on!" the driver bellowed at him, slowing down without coming to a full stop. Ambler threw himself on the large rear section of the motorcycle seat, and the Ducati roared off again. There had been no time to reason through the odds. He had had to follow his instinct. He could feel the power of the engine thrumming against his thighs. "Hold on tight," the driver bellowed again. Moments later, the motorcycle was bounding down the steps at the opposite side of the plaza, the back half torquing upward wildly. Pedestrians on the sidewalk had already scattered in dismay. The driver knew what he was doing, however, and soon the bike had zipped into traffic, maneuvering around a dump truck, a taxicab, a UPS van. The driver seemed to be monitoring the double rearview mirrors for any sign of police. 2 blocks north, he turned onto Duane Street and pulled over and beside a standing limousine. The limousine was a burgundy-colored Bentley. Its driver, Ambler noticed, was attired in olive drab livery. The passenger door opened for Ambler, and he got inside, settling back on the light tan leather seat. The Bentley was beautifully soundproofed. When the rear door was closed with a solid thunk, the city noises disappeared. The rear cabin was spacious. It was also carefully recessed away from the sightlines of pedestrians or other motorists. Despite the immediate sense of seclusion, Ambler was not alone. Another man was already seated in the back, and now he opened a window in the glass partition and spoke to the driver in a soft guttural tongue. There's like 3 or 4 sentences in another language that I do not recognize, so I don't know what it says. I don't know how to pronounce any of it. Anyway, Ambler took another look at the driver, dirty blonde hair, the face that was all angles and planes. Now the driver sent the limousine off gently into the city traffic. Ambler's fellow passenger then turned and greeted him with a cheerful hello. Ambler felt a jolt of recognition. He knew this man. It was the man Arcady had promised Ambler he would meet. "He's someone you know, someone who has worked beside you." A man he had known only as Osiris, and who had known him only as Tarquin. Osiris was a large man in his 60s, bald save for a fringe of red hair around his ears and nape. He had been softer on the middle when they'd worked together in the political stabilization unit, but was always surprisingly fast on his feet, especially considering his other incapacity. "It's been a while," Ambler said. Osiris moved his head slightly as Ambler spoke and smiled, his blue, filmy eyes almost but not quite meeting Ambler's eyes. "Long time no see," he agreed. Osiris was skilled at making people forget that he was blind, had been since birth. Osiris spoke in visual terms, alert to the sun, to the texture of someone's jacket, and continually translated tactile or auditory information into its visual counterpart. But then translation was always his forte. Consular operations had had no more brilliant linguists. It was not just that he could speak and understand all the major languages. He was expert at creoles, minor dialects, regional accents, the languages people actually spoke, not the idealized versions of them taught at language schools. He knew whether a German came from Dresden or Leipzig, Hessen or Thuringen. He could tell the vowels of one Hanseatic province from another, could differentiate 30 strains of street Arabic in third world regions where multiple languages were found in a single neighborhood. In Nigeria, say, where Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, and strange creoles and pidgins of English and Arabic might be spoken within one extended household, Osiris's skills could be invaluable. He could listen to recordings that would cause experts at the State Department's Africa desk to throw up their hands or ask for a 3-month study period, and provide an instantaneous rendition of the rapid-fire palaver. Our driver doesn't have any English, I'm afraid, the man known as Osiris told Ambler, but he speaks Albanian like a prince. In fact, I'm sure most of his fellow expats find him a bit prissy. He pressed a button in the drinks compartment, slid out from the partition. His hands betrayed almost no trace of groping as he removed a bottle of water and poured some into 2 glasses. He waited for Ambler to take one before he took the other, a man alleviating the natural suspicions of another man. Apologies for all the monkey business, Osiris went on. I'm sure you've figured out the score. My employers needed to confirm that you weren't a sawbuck on a string, and it wasn't as if they could exactly check references. Ambler nodded. It was as he had thought. The setup at the plaza had been a means to verify his bona fides. They had just watched him pull the trigger at a man he had been told was a government agent. Had he still been in the employ of the United States, he would never have done so. What happens to the mark, the guy in the Yankees jacket? Who knows? Nothing to do with us, really. Apparently, the feds launched an investigation into price fixing in the construction industry, and that guy got flipped, turned state's evidence. If you sensed he was running scared, you were right. Lots of scary people would like to see him go down. Just not us. But Arcady didn't know. What Arcady told you is what we told him. He thought he was on the level because he didn't know we put him on the slant. Osiris laughed. I lied to him, he lied to you, but it got purified in the pass-along because he believed what he was saying. A useful reminder, Ambler said. How do I know you haven't been lied to as well about other things? He glanced up at the driver's rearview mirror, experienced a surge of vertigo. The fleshy, balding Osiris was seated next to another man, someone Ambler could not immediately place. Short brown hair, blue eyes, and a face that was symmetrical, almost cruelly handsome. A face it took Ambler a moment to recognize. A face that was and was not his own. A face that he had seen for the first time in a Motel 6 and that still had the power to chill his blood. The premise of the question would negate my ability to answer it, Osiris said in a deliberative tone. His filmy blue eyes stared sightlessly at Ambler. So trust your instincts. Isn't that what you always do? Ambler swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and turned toward the blind operative. A pop quiz, then. Do you know my name? How many jobs did we work on together? 3, 4. After having known you for all these years, you'd think I would have picked up a thing or two. Tarquin, real name Henry Nyberg. Nyberg's another cover name, Ambler interrupted, used a few times and discarded. What's my name? Now you sound like a 9th Avenue pimp, Osiris drawled, trying to maintain a jocular tone. What's my name? Who's your daddy? Look, I understood you'd have questions, but I'm not the information desk. I may have some answers. I don't have all the answers. And why is that? Osiris's opaque blue eyes looked curiously alert beneath his faint, almost porcine eyebrows. Because some answers are, well, above my pay grade. I'll take what I can get. A little learning is a dangerous thing, my friend. Words to take to heart. You may not want to know what you think you want to know. Try me. Osiris's sightless eyes fixed him with a long, considering look. I know a better place to talk, he said.